Welcome to the Paws, Mongolia podcast. Today's episode, I want to share something very personal and very close to my heart. This is the story about love, loss, grief, and how that grief changed the direction of my life. Almost 1 year ago, I lost my beloved dog Merlin. He was my baby boy, an 11-year-old golden retriever, and saying goodbye to him was one of the most painful experiences of my life. I am sharing this story because when I was going through my grief, I researched for help, for understanding, and for voices that truly spoke about pet loss. I found very little resources out there. Most grief resources were focused on human losses. But losing a companion animal is different. The pain is real, deep, and often misunderstood. If you are grieving a pet, I want you to know you are not alone. Merlin was not just a dog. He was family. He was part of my everyday life, my emotional world, and my sense of home. When he was diagnosed with lymphoma, our life changed overnight. The diagnosis was devastating, but we decided to pursue cancer treatment because we wanted more time with him. That decision gave us about 6 more months together. At the time, that 6 months felt precious and necessary. But the journey was very hard. The treatments were difficult for him. There were hospital visits, medications, side effects, and constant worry and sleepless nights. Looking back now, I sometimes question whether the treatment was the right choice. I wonder if it was too much for his body, if he held on for longer for ourselves than for him. Many pet parents face this painful question, and I have learned there is no perfect decision. Every decision we make comes from love. We do the best we can with the information and emotions we have that time. That 6 months were filled with anticipatory grief. Every day I watched him closely, wondering how he felt, whether he was in pain, whether he was tired. Unlike humans, animals cannot tell us how they were feeling. They don't say, "I'm suffering" or "I'm ready." That silence makes the emotional burden even heavier. We carry the responsibility of interpreting their comfort, their quality of life, and ultimately the decision of when to let them go. The day we chose euthanasia was the hardest decision I ever made. It felt like I was choosing the moment to lose him, even though I knew it was the most compassionate choice. I remember holding him, talking to him, and feeling my heart break in a way I had never experienced before. After he passed, the shock was overwhelming. The house felt empty. The silence was heavy. His absence was everywhere. His bed, his routine, the sound he used to make, everything reminds me that he was gone. For a long time after his passing, life felt like it had stopped. I could not sleep. Nights were specifically difficult. My mind replayed the last month again and again the treatments, the decisions, the final day. I questioned myself constantly. I felt guilt, sadness, and deep sense of emptiness. Even everyday life lost its joy. My husband and I both felt the weight of the loss. Our home no longer felt the same. One thing I realized during this time is that my grief for Marilyn felt deeper and different than grief I had experienced for humans. That realization surprised me at first, but over time I understood why. Companion animals are with us every day. They give unconditional love. They depend on us completely. They don't judge us, argue with us, or misunderstand us. Their bond is pure, constant, and silent. When that bond is gone, the emotional space they occupied feels enormous. There is also a unique sense of responsibility and guilt because we make medical decisions, treatment decisions, and end-of-the-life decisions for them. After challenge is that pet loss, grief is often not fully recognized by society. Some people said it was just a dog or expect you to recover quickly. This kind of response can make grieving pet parents feel isolated or misunderstood. During my grieving process, I researched for resources specifically about pet loss, but there were not many. One source that helped me was listening to grief conversation and interviews by Anderson Cooper, CNN. Hearing honest discussions about grief helped me understand that grief is not something to fix or overtime quickly. It is something we learn to live with. Now, almost 1 year later, I am still grieving, but my grief has changed. In the beginning, pain was overwhelming and constant and unbearable. Now it is quieter, but it is still there. I would describe my life today as living with both sadness and joy at the same time. About the 50% of me still feels the sadness of losing my Marilyn, and 50% of me is learning to enjoy life again, and I have stopped trying to eliminate the sadness. Instead, I am learning to accept it. It is part of my life. I am also learning to make grief my companion, my friend, not my enemy. One of the most important lessons Marilyn taught me is how to live in the present. Dogs live fully in the moment. They don't worry about the past or future. Through my grief, I began to understand how precious the present moment is. Instead of resisting my emotions, I am learning to feel them, accept them, and continue to moving forward. My dog's life and loss did more than change my emotional world. It gave my grief a direction and purpose. 3 years ago, before he became ill, I traveled to Mongolia. During that time, I was shocked by a number of stray dogs and cats living on the streets. Many were thin, sick, or struggling to survive in the street. That affected me most was the winter. Mongolia's climate is extremely harsh with temperatures that drop far below freezing. For stray animals, survival during winter is incredibly difficult. I also felt that animal suffering was not always fully recognized or addressed. I tried to reach out international organizations to find support, but Mongolia is often overlooked with population of about 3.5 millions. It was considered a small country, and many large organizations focus their resources on countries with larger populations, which is understandable. After Marilyn passed, I felt deep need to turn my grief to something meaningful. I realized that the love I still had for him needed somewhere to go. That realization led to creation of Paws Mongolia. The organization was born from loss, but also from love, compassion, and responsibility. I began to understand that my dog's life could continue to create positive impact through the work I do for other animals. Now looking back, I also recognize that my connection to animals started very early age. Even though I was very little young child, I was sensitive to animal suffering. Even when I watched movies that showed horses in the war senses, all animals being used for labor, I felt sadness and empathy for them. That compassion was always part of me. Merlin did not create the feelings, but he awakened it and gave it direction. Today I see grief differently. Grief is not something that disappears. It changes shape over time. It becomes a part of who we are. It reminds us of how deeply we loved. If you are grieving a pet right now, I want you to know that your feelings are valid. There is no timeline for healing. There is no right way to grieve. Your sadness reflects the depth of your bond. Love does not end when a life ends. It transforms. Sometimes it becomes memories. Sometimes it becomes gratitude. And sometimes if we allow it, grief becomes a purpose. My dog is not longer physically with me, but he continues to guide me in life. Because of him, I work to help animals who are suffering. Because of him, I understand more deeply that unconditional love means. And because of him, I have learned that grief is not only about loss. It is also about love that continues even after goodbye. Please follow our podcast and subscribe my YouTube channel too. Thank you so much.